Hello and welcome to the Silver King's War. I'm Michael Sievers, the writer, producer, and creator of this podcast series about my father's Second World War as a B-26 bombardier. Today we continue in the epilogue for Dearest Ones, the letters that our hero, the Silver King, wrote to his family throughout the war. Stanley's first full week in May concludes with the news that the official German surrender is May 8th, 1945. The Silver King and his guys will celebrate the great news and their personal relief about the end of the war in the European theater of operations. Stanley's first letter since the official surrender was written on May 11th, 1945, from Germany. Dearest Ones, I certainly have neglected you this past week, and I apologize. However, under the circumstances, I'm sure you will forgive me, and too, considering the events that have taken place. Now that this mess is actually over, you must be as happy as I. Still, it is difficult to realize it's over. I was right in saying the anticipation was greater than the realization. The act of peace was taken calmly by all here. Of course, we all got tight, but there wasn't any presence of an air of celebration. Personally, I had thought that I would be elated beyond words when the end finally came, but to the contrary, I didn't feel anything at all. The only explanation I can offer is that the war in the Pacific is staring us in the face, and it isn't such a pleasant sight. You're probably anxious to know what will happen now, and I wish I could tell you something definite. But I'm as ignorant of it all as you are. At the present, we aren't doing anything, just waiting for something to happen. So don't expect me home anytime soon. I'll probably see the summer through before returning to the States. Just be patient and console yourself with the fact that I'm safe. I'm so glad Johnson was able to talk to you. Before he left, he promised to call or see some member of the family. It's a lucky break you happen to be in Chicago. I, too, am sorry you weren't able to meet him, as he is a swell fellow. I really hated to see him leave. We'll close for now, hoping you're well. Love to Ida. I love you and miss you, Stan. And P.S. A very happy Mother's Day, Mother dear. I'm sorry I can't send you any flowers. This 2-page letter from the King is full of information in its solemn and easy way. Of course, he's grateful that the war is over in Europe, while worrying that they may be shipped to the Pacific as that war rages on. But they will celebrate in Germany and be very grateful that they are safe and warm. The Silver King has acknowledged to his family that he may remain in Europe throughout the summer as the Air Corps untangles its warriors and prepares to ship them home. But in the middle of a sunny May in Europe, where the air is quiet for the moment, Stanley doesn't seem too concerned that he may not see his family till the end of the year. Unfortunately for the King, amidst the calm and celebration of the news about the end of the war in Europe, is a significant bit of domestic disturbance with news from home. Stanley's response to the home front news, as is his wont, will be buried deep in a 4-page letter to his family on May 14th of 1945. Dearest Ones, I haven't heard from you for a few days, but I'm not complaining. The situation hasn't changed since my last letter, and consequently I can't give you any news. You're probably very anxious to know what will happen to me, and I assure you I'm just as anxious, but your guess is as good as mine. One of three things can carve my immediate future. I can become part of the Army of Occupation. I can go direct to the Pacific, or I can be sent home. Naturally, all my hopes are based on the latter, and I shall be greatly disappointed if one of the others becomes true. So, my advice to you is to be patient, as you have been thus far. Remember, everything happens for the best. After VE Day, we were given a 3-day holiday, during which time I visited that part of Germany which had caused us so much hell during hostilities, the Ruhr Valley. I visited Essen and Dusseldorf, big industrial centers. I was anxious to see just what the Allied air power had done, and I was very satisfied with the results. All the cities here have been reduced to rubble. It's evident that air power was the deciding factor. They were crippled in every means of manufacturing, besides the entire city being leveled. But now that it's all over, the people have come out of hiding and are moving back into what's left of the city. Already they are shoveling and attempting to clean the rubble from the streets. Men, women, and children can be seen working with just their bare hands, removing the debris. Of course, it's easy to see how the army has drained the families. Only the very old and very young are left. And I never saw so many children between the ages of 1 and 5. And the king continues. The farmer and his fields are intact, never having been touched by the war. And as you know, the farmer is the backbone of a nation. There is very beautiful farmland with every inch utilized. Honestly, as you travel along the highway, it makes you homesick. It's so much like the States. Of course, it will be a hard winter for most of Germany, especially for the people in the cities, because of the food shortage, and that will be due to the lack of transportation. And now, deep in page 3 of this letter, the king comes down hard on his mother. I received the temple Serviceman with my face plastered all over it, and I've never been so disgusted in all my life. I'm absolutely ashamed of myself, and thank God I'm not there to face the people, because the embarrassment would be more than I can bear. Why you ever did such a thing I shall never know. I simply can't understand you. Surely you would have known better than to consent to such notoriety. I'm not a hero. I haven't done any more than the next man. When I saw that, I was so ashamed, I couldn't even show it to my buddies. And the king continues, it seems to me that you have asked my permission, since I didn't agree with the last article written about me. And this time you can't say it wasn't your fault, as I know you're the only ones that have my picture. Thanks, Dad, for your very sweet letter on my birthday. I just wish you would write more often. No more news for now. Oh yes, I received a birthday card and quarterly from Phi Ep. Do you know how they got my address? My love to Cece and Ida. Keep well. I love you and miss you, Stan. Now, our hero, the Silver King, may not consider himself a hero in this context, but in reality, he was a decorated bombardier. His family had inquired about the extent of his decorations, which began with the Air Medal. Now, the Army established the Air Medal in 1944. Oak leaf clusters were awarded on the Air Medal's ribbon for additional awards. Bronze oak leaf clusters for every additional award, and silver oak leaf clusters for every 5 additional awards. Extra ribbons were worn to hold extra clusters if the recipient had earned more than 4 clusters. One award was credited per every 25 hours of combat assault flights, just considered any flight in which aircraft was directly involved in combat. 50 hours of combat support flights for visual reconnaissance and resupply, or 100 hours of non-combat service flights for administration and VIP flights. And flight hours were calculated in 6-minute blocks. In 1968, the numerals replaced the oak leaf clusters to simplify their display. As the king's son and storyteller, I'm happy to report that in his war memorabilia, we found 2 copies of Serviceman with the king on the front page. One copy is in our apartment in Portland, and the other is in Bend, Oregon, with our nephew, Andrew Post, and his family. It took a few days for our hero to recover from his serviceman anger, and knowing the king over the years as his son, both as a child and an adult, it's easy to understand why he was so angry. He was perhaps the most self-effacing adult I have ever known. He was a dignified and quiet man, a husband, father, friend, and businessman who enjoyed the stories of others throughout the decades and shared the news of his family and how proud he was of my sister and me. The Silver King returned to his usual good mood as he wrote to his family on May 18th, 1945. Dearest Ones, it was truly grand hearing from you today. I have your letters of May 2, 8, and 10. Why the others haven't arrived, I don't know. Also, I have your package, which was sent for my birthday. The fruitcake was really delicious. Thanks a million. You certainly had a grand visit, and I can understand how you hated to leave. It was swell Sylvia got there. You must have had a wonderful reunion. Now that I know Cece is definitely there with you, I'm very glad, as I'm sure she is grand company for you. Too bad you had to be on the train during all the celebration for V-Day. I can imagine how the people must have gone wild at the announcement. If only the war in the Pacific was over, there would be such reason to celebrate. I'm glad you realize that I might be sent to the Pacific. The best rumors have it that we are going home in 4 to 6 months. I suppose it would take that long for things to run smoothly enough to get us out of here. At the present, I'm not doing a damn thing but sitting on my fanny and reading everything I can get my hands on. It's a little boring. Now the king will share the best of his post-war news. As he begins, yesterday I received the shock of my life. I received a letter from Festi, you know, my old pilot who was shot down in February. It was the first word anyone had heard of the crew since that fatal day. When I saw his name on the envelope, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I'm more than happy to say the whole crew is in good shape. They were taken prisoners after they had bailed out and were liberated about 3 weeks ago. Now they are on their way back to the States, which they deserve. Next to the news that the war was ending, it's the best news I've had yet, for Festi was like a brother to me, and I hadn't really ever gotten over losing him. But now that I know he is safe, I feel like a new man. I can just imagine how his folks must feel. You might write Fombi's folks, but I'm sure they must know by now. I'm fine and thinking of you constantly, hoping you're well. Love to Cece and Ida. I love you and miss you, Stan. As you know, the Festi Fombi saga for the Silver King began in that humid summer at Shreveport, Louisiana, when the boys trained on the B-26, the Martin Marauder. I know the king loved his guys, and when they went down in late February of 1945, he undoubtedly was heartbroken. Getting the news that his guys were alive and well, they were safe and on their way home, was wonderful for the king. It was a jolt of good information, and he really needed it as he was uncertain about what his future might be. As we reflect on Stanley's good news, I share with you the news that I'm recording this episode almost 77 years to the day when Festi's boys went down. And we have reached the end of this episode of the Epilogue for Dearest Ones, the letters that our hero wrote to his family throughout the war, and this is part 36. And you are listening to the Silver King's War.